This is The Culture.
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Cinema Wave podcast. We are here talking once again about everyone's favorite reality television program, The Golden Bachelor. I am one of your hosts. My name is Darian Scalamoni. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Liz Seiko.
Yes, I'm ready.
Let's do it. So this is an episode that I feel like catered a lot to what you are looking for in not only reality television in general, but The Bachelor.
Yeah.
So we get some drama.
Yeah. I feel like the first two episodes were a little bit more like, aw, like, look at us doing The Golden Bachelor. And then all of a sudden this one was like, boom, let's do Bachelor, like get the drama going, get the fight started. So I'm excited about this. And I feel like they started it right away because the opening shot was like Gary crying. And so they were kind of like preluding to drama that was going to come. And then right away they go into all the women just standing around in the house with each other, like kind of boasting about like, oh, I really feel connected to Gary.
Yep.
Like I have a connection. I felt this way. He said this to me, which right away I was like, ooh.
We're starting to lay the groundwork for the real competitive nature of what the series is going to become because every single woman in that house thinks that they have a good reason why Gary would pick them.
Yeah.
And we, the opening shot of him crying, my girlfriend and I watching it, we were just like, oh my God, Gary. And then
when you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And when you see the context of the episode and how much happens in this episode, he could have honestly been crying because of a number of different things.
He's been just stressed
There's
out.
so many things that are happening. And I do like that later in the episode, he actually has a moment where he talks about how he doesn't want to deal with the drama. I was like, good for you, Gary. Like, nobody, first of all, nobody wants to really deal with the drama. That's why we have reality TV.
Absolutely.
Because we watch other people's drama. But we do get our first real villain. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's talk about, so we why don't you talk about what you have written in your notes?
Okay, so I take notes just as I'm watching, and it's like natural instinct. And so really this episode starts with just the women starting to get a little testy with each other and are starting to make a little bit of digs. They're getting a little cliquey. They actually start a group called Askin, and it's like the first letter of the 5 women that are in it. And I think it's...
Wait, how did I miss that?
How did you... It's when Kathy's like talking in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
I think it's April, Susan, Kathy. I don't know who the next one is.
Okay.
I think it's either I or E. Maybe it's Ellen and then Nancy. Okay. And so they're like grouping together and they're starting to get a little chatty about the other people in the group.
Little gossip corner. Yeah.
And then Kathy comes out straight away and she's like, I do not like Theresa. Like she is bothering me. And so Kathy kind of rips the Band-Aid off of being like, I don't like this person specifically, and this is why. And the reason she doesn't like her is because she thinks Theresa is boasting and showing off around the other girls that she's getting a little bit more attention than them from Gary.
Yeah, so I want your opinion first on, we get the flashback after, like she's talking about it to the other women, and then it kind of like flashes back in like a different sequence, and it shows Theresa talking about her date, specifically to Kathy, like either the next day or whenever it is in terms of timing. But I'm curious on, like, did you believe that what Theresa was doing was boasting? Because I didn't, but
I don't think she's aware of what she's doing. I don't think she's purposely saying, ooh, I'm going to play my hand this way and make everybody insecure by saying these things. But I also think there's a level of awareness that these other women are interested in him. So don't show them all your cards.
Well, you think she's like, because I got a sense more that, especially the second time it happens at the end of the episode, that was a situation where I was like, this woman is so airheaded that she just had a conversation with Kathy later that we'll get to, where she's basically like, stop doing what you're doing, and then she immediately does it again.
I think though in Theresa's head, she's asking in this situation, she was then asking Kathy, oh, how was it for you? Like, how was your mini date or mini conversation? So in her head, she's probably thinking like, well, I'm asking Kathy about her experience so that then I can talk about mine.
Yeah, which is a much more nuanced experience because she had a lot more time with Gary.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's calculated, but I think she's very open.
Yeah.
Which, girl, you're on reality TV. Like, you gotta rein in. You gotta keep a little bit more to your chest, especially in the early episodes. Otherwise, because the thing is, some of these women will spin things a certain way to make themselves look better. I mean, that's just how the game's played.
Yeah.
And so if you just go in thinking everyone's gonna be nice and friendly, you're gonna get cut.
Yeah, and that almost happens to her in this episode.
It does. So then after they give us a little taste of like tension starting. Jesse comes right in and says that there is going to be a group date.
What were your thoughts on this group date comparatively to last week?
Way better.
I agree.
Way better concept.
Yeah.
I think I liked this episode more just because it wasn't as cheesy too. It was more realistic, a little bit funnier. Just them being normal people rather than trying to be like a fake story telling. So he comes in, he makes it known that it's not just a small group date, it's going to be everybody in it, and it's a talent show. And that the winner of the talent show gets to have a one-on-one dinner with Gary after. So right away, I feel like some of the women are excited about it. And then some women are like, oh, God, this is the last thing I want to do.
Because that's a very terrifying and vulnerable thing that has to happen, not only for like 60, 70-year-old women, but literally
people,
for
just
anyone.
for people in general. Honestly, if I were in this situation and they were like, talent show, you have to do a talent, I really don't even know what I would do.
Well, think about imagine the women that went up there, like Joan, for example, which we'll get to. But
Joan, I loved.
I
right
did
away,
too.
she's like, I have no talent. She's like, I'm just me. She's
yeah,
like,
well, she talks about she was either an English teacher or she was an administrator. So
something.
She does something in terms of like she writes a hymn poem, which, like I said, we'll get to it because I want to talk about all the individual talents. But with it, there is just this aspect of it where it's like, imagine you never really were an open person or an open book and you put yourself out there in that way and you're 75 years old and you're doing it for the first time with a large studio audience and judges and for someone that you're potentially trying to fall in love with. It's like a crazy concept.
It's crazy. And then also in your mind, you're like, oh my God, I also need to stand out so that I can get this like dinner date. Yeah, I would not. I mean, like, what would you do? What would be your talent?
I don't know. I mean, when I was in high school, I did the evolution of dance. That might have to be
you
my
might have
thing.
to break it back
Yeah,
out.
I might have to break that out for this. But we get a lot of different talents in this. We get
many different talents.
So just some of them are listed here, but we have karate, sex ed, which was actually really funny.
Killed me.
Who was the one that did sex ed? Do you remember? Ellen. Okay, yeah. So we get the sex ed, stand-up comedy. We got a singer, a whipped cream catcher, which is
good. Honestly,
yeah, good for you.
I'm now putting that in my back pocket of like, if I ever get thrown in a situation and it's like you need to do a talent, great. Whipped cream catching.
It's like the next thing that I thought was going to happen was someone's going to like balance an M&M on their nose or like something like ridiculous that was going to happen. But then I know when they show, I think it was Kathy, they show her just doing push-ups.
Yeah, so Kathy.
And my girlfriend is just like, push-ups? That's like, what is that? That's physical fitness. That's not a talent. It's like everyone should be capable of doing a push-up.
Well, I also like how they didn't say how many push-ups.
Yes. They just show her doing
just said
about 3.
Well, and because underneath each woman's name, they said what the talent was. And so they just put push-ups. I was hoping they'd be like 100 push-ups or something to make me be like, oh, okay, Kathy, like you got it. No, she's just doing push-ups. Then April, I couldn't tell you what she was doing. I want to say she was being like a hype woman. Do you know? She was like running across the stage just being like, you're beautiful. Like, you're incredible. Like, you do the damn thing. And I was like, no idea. I don't know what's happening.
It's like slam poetry.
Yeah,
like,
but the audience was loving it. Yes. They were like, yeah.
I want like the raw footage of seeing all these women doing their talents.
Yeah, well, because they also probably edit it to make it look more exciting than some of them were. Like, I'm sure some of these people just like fell flat.
Yeah, which I kind of want to see that aspect.
I know.
I don't know.
And then the most interesting one, Leslie.
So the last 2 that they show kind of are the final two in terms of the winners of the talent. Well, there's only one winner, but the two that I think it kind of comes down to. And so Leslie basically does this like very provocative.
She starts off just dancing and you're like, okay, she can move. And then all of a sudden she brings Gary on stage, puts him in a chair.
Yep.
And
for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, starts getting a little close and a little touchy-feely with him. And the other women, they're doing side cuts to them and they're like, she got a little raunchy out there. And are just not, you can tell also on some of the women's faces, they're not happy about it.
Well, I think also because at least in terms of, and again, this might not necessarily be the case, but in terms of what we've seen so far in the editing too, Gary is definitely the most sexually attracted to Leslie.
Of
and
course.
It's very obvious because, I mean, we have the whispering
the
sweet
whisper
nothings
in the ear.
the week before that, and then we have the Magic Mike dance.
There's so much adding to it.
There's a lot that happens.
Well, and then Leslie does like a surprise and she flips over the chair and then she's like, and I bake too. And she has like cookies under the chair. I died when that happened because I was like, this girl is really, she's gone for it.
Yeah, 100%.
She's like fighting hard. And then next up, and so you're kind of left thinking like, oh, Leslie got it. Like he's going to go with her because she was the most entertaining and she brought him on stage. And then all of a sudden Joan comes on and they had already prepared us that she doesn't have a talent. She's not feeling comfortable or confident. And then she says, she's like, I wrote a poem for you, Gary. Oh my God. The sweetest poem. Rhymes. It was rhyming throughout. It was relevant. It was also like showing that she wasn't super comfortable being on stage, but she was still doing it. And I thought it was a very good talent, actually.
I do too. And
one of my favorites.
I think the thing that's interesting about whether they're doing this through editing or this is really who Gary is, he's having these little flirtatious moments with some of the women, but every time he's picking someone that like touches him deeper on an emotional level, which maybe this is me being naive, but it's like part of me believes that he's making the choices on a lot of the dates because of that. This one, though, interestingly enough, seemed like it was set up. And the reason I think that is because the week prior, we don't see much of Joan at all until we see her on the bed where she's crying about, or she's upset about like how it brings back memories of her husband that had passed, right? Yeah. And so they have that little conversation together, but you don't see much of her like at all before then.
Yeah.
And then, so just to preface, like, again, Joan wins the date.
Yes, she does.
Spoiler alert. It's a spoiler if you guys didn't understand that already at this point. We're recapping. Joan wins the date and they go on this date and I felt no chemistry between the two of them.
Me too. I really was like, these are just two friends having a good conversation.
So part of me thought that they were like trying to provide this tender moment to give him a date with this woman that I think, again, she's an attractive woman. She's very mild-mannered. She's not out there like the other women, like just crazy trying to go for it. And I do think there's an element of that. Like he says later in the episode, he doesn't want to deal with drama. There's an element that it's like he does enjoy that. But I think they set this up and it felt very much like there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Which makes the next moment even more interesting because she wins the date. They go on the date. There's not much that they even talk about. They just kind of talk about their respective losses, but it still doesn't have that emotional core that some of the other conversations that he's had with some of the other women that have similar experiences. You don't feel that as a viewer. And then you find out the next day, even though she thinks that she thought the date was great, that she's going home. So
yeah, because she ended up opening up to him at the dinner about how her daughter just had a baby while she was away, and that she ends up saying that the birth and wasn't that easy and that her daughter's struggling. So then the next day she says that she got a text from her daughter and that she's like, I'm going to figure this out. And then she goes down to the living room with all the other women. And right away the women are like laughing and they're like, Joan, oh my God. And then they know, they're like, oh, wait, what's happening? You're crying. She says, she's like, I'm going to go. My daughter's not doing well. Which I think is great. I mean, like, at the end of the day, if this woman is not actually having a connection with Gary, like, she needs to go to the people that are actually a part of her life, not just stay on a show hoping to either get famous or like just to keep going for no reason.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree. But there's for the logistical element of The Bachelor, I do have a question because my girlfriend, who again is a resident Bachelor watcher, was saying it's very interesting that she had her phone because they really don't allow you. It must have been something very, very serious that the producers would have even let her use her phone. Did you feel that, or did you think that this was somewhat of a ploy that she wanted to go home? I'm not saying that what happened to her daughter didn't potentially happen, but I'm saying, do you think that part of it was maybe amplified, or do you think that, again, it was something where, because they usually, on most reality television, you're not allowed to have your cell phones.
You don't get your phone.
Yeah.
I think,
like, do you think someone got in touch with the producer and was like, this is a serious thing, we want to talk to her, and then she made the decision herself to go home?
I do.
Okay.
I think that they have contacts for like emergency situations. And I think when Joan came on the show, she obviously already knew her daughter was going to probably give labor while she was here at the show. So she probably said, I will come on the show, but under my contract, like when my daughter gives birth, like I need to know what's happening. And so she said, she's like, well, the birth didn't go well. So she probably already had heard like the birth didn't have, like it happened, but it didn't have a good situation. So then she probably kept saying like, I need to be in touch with my daughter. Or I'm leaving, you know, because at the end of the day, they really don't want these contestants just to like dip out fully. I mean, they already had one contestant completely leave and they didn't really show her
They
exiting.
didn't talk about it at all.
No, they just had her go because I think she had a family emergency as well. So I think this one, they didn't want her to leave. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's their decision whether to go or not. The phone, I was surprised that they showed that, but it was probably also they just needed to show like there was a reason for her to leave.
Well, yeah, because part of it is that she went on a date the night before.
Yeah.
So it's like an immediate
I think it needed to be
shift.
like a trigger of like, I actually need to go now.
Yeah,
This isn't something I've been thinking about. This is something that I have to leave for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that happened. I think they handled it really nicely. And then they went right into another date, like another date card right away. They didn't talk much about
And does this happen throughout the season? Like he'll just request random dates to get to know people better?
Yeah, so on each episode it's usually a group date and then like a private date.
But this was 2 private dates.
Technically, but really it was like a group date that turned into a private
So there was
date.
there was an incentive based thing.
Yeah. So I mean, they could do it whatever they want, but usually it's like he picks 1 or 2 people to meet privately with, and then it's a group date.
Okay.
And Ellen gets picked.
Ellen gets the pick.
She gets picked, and she gets to go dress up in these gorgeous gowns. Gets dressed up fully to the T, and then she meets him, and they go. Do they go directly to the air balloon?
They sit down first and they talk about things and how they're really enjoying the process of getting to know one another.
You're right.
And Ellen talks about how she's like kind of falling for him already and she cares a lot about him. And he's like, I feel the same about you. And it's like a lovely moment that they have between the two of them. But I think Ellen's stock is high.
Ooh, okay,
If we're checking temperatures on, I think that Ellen is someone that you could kind of tell that in terms of chemistry, like just emotional chemistry and just conversationally, that they're on like a different level, I feel like, than a lot of them. Like even with Leslie, I do think that she's going to be there towards the end, but I think that a big part of it is that he's, like I said, like he's attracted to her visually, but I think that part of it is that she's so different than everybody else. Ellen, I think, is somebody where he's looking for a partner that he can like confide in, he can enjoy the conversation and laugh with and talk about things that mean a lot to them. And it's, I don't know what it, but there's something about her where I'm like, I think I am confident on this week's episode to say that I think she is at least making the bottom 3.
Nice. Okay. I think you're right on that. Also because sometimes the producers will keep the end pick a little bit more hidden in the editing. Like I feel like she doesn't get that much screen time compared to other women.
Exactly. I agree.
And so I think they're kind of keeping her in the back pocket of like, okay, we're going to start showing her a little bit later in the episode. I also, she's not problematic. She's very easy. She's just kind of there, but she's also funny. I think she was the sex ed one, right? Wasn't she? For
I think
her talent?
she was. Yeah.
She was funny. And
she's gonna have her episode in the Sun next week.
She is.
Yeah. So they also say that she's even in her lower third, they keep showing that she's like a pickleball captain. Like that's her job now or whatever.
She's gonna thrive from this point on.
But next week's episode is a big pickle. Like they're doing like a pickleball tournament or whatever it is, and you can tell that she's starting to get intense. So I think it's going to play in her favor. And I don't know, like I said, I think that there's a lot of chemistry. I thought there was the most chemistry out of the 3 dates so far with him and Ellen.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, and then she ends up getting a rose and she gets a kiss at the end of her date, which is really sweet.
Hot air balloon. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I like it. I think it's like an actual good date.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the dress up was like way too much for that situation.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like way over the top. But yeah, I'd go in a hot air balloon.
Would you go on a hot air balloon that goes up in the sky, or would you do it the way they did it where it's tied down? Did you realize it was tied down?
No.
Yeah, it was
tied
tied
down. It never went up?
They were like, it went up, but they were tied down to the ground still. So like.
Aren't you always?
No. I don't think that's true.
I think it's true because
Really?
like, I think so.
No, right? Producer Zach is shaking his head no. You always go up.
Well, I'm so confused. They were in the air though.
They were in the air, but they were tethered. Like they were tethered to the ground. So they went up 100 feet in the air, but they were tethered to the ground. You can go higher
I feel
in a
like
hot air
they're
balloon.
always tied to the ground
No,
somehow.
see, this is why I wanted your opinion, because I'm terrified of heights. Spoiler alert for the world. And I would never go all the way up because I would probably shit a brick.
I would go all the way up, but only with certain people. Like if I'm up there with somebody who's kind of like likes to make people like nervous, I'm not going
What's
up with
about
them.
your significant other? Would you?
Of course. Of course I would. But like I'm not going in a hot air balloon with like a group of friends that like have had a couple of drinks and are gonna be like,
we're talking about The Bachelor, Liz.
I know, but but they were up in the hot air balloon with a camera guy who was definitely there and like
All up in their face.
On the date with them. I definitely think though just move on.
Okay. So they go on the date in the hot air balloon.
Yes.
After that, we start to see the real drama happen that we've alluded to. We've skirted around a little bit in this episode, but let's dive in.
Kathy
is the villain. So
I'm all for a villain.
So
I think she's a great villain.
I think she's a great villain. I think that there was an edge to her that you could tell was there from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me thinks it's amped up by the producers. I think that there is an element of it where they're like, hey, Kathy, he's not really feeling you too much.
Yes.
I think that if you want to really get something going, like you might need to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that she in a I don't want to spin this as if it was a good thing what she was doing, but she picks on the perfect person.
Of course. Well, I think it was somebody that naturally was already kind of like making her a little annoyed. And so then she was like, okay, if I got to do what I got to do to stay on this show, I'm going to go for somebody that actually is kind of bothering me so that I can let my anger out.
Yeah.
But on the same note, like I do think it's hard to be friendly or even friends with people in this house when you're all going after the same person.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that's hard because when you are kind of interested in somebody or starting to like have feelings for another person, you do want to talk to people about it and be like, oh my God, this happened. So like, do you think he's into me? Do you think like they're interested? They said this. And the fact that these women don't really have a neutral person to like bounce that off of because all of them have feelings for the same person. I think it's a great recipe for great entertainment.
Yeah,
TV.
it's a lot of drama. I would agree with you. I think that if like I was in a scenario like this, like maybe forming a pretty decent friendship with one person to just sort of like lean on, but like
I know, but then also at the end of the day, it's like you're my friend, but I want you to lose. Like I want to beat you out of this so that I could get the guy.
But I think in other shows too, like again, when you have like those like when they talk about like bromances or like like sisterhood, like that's like the thing that you start to see in certain reality television where you'll see like two people that kind of sort of form a really good connection in terms of just like friendship and things like that. I mean, I think about like a season of Big Brother where the two finalists like were really, really good friends the whole time and they made, I think, a truce like week 3 of Big Brother, and they're like, every week it's about us. And then at the end, it got down to the 2 of them, which I think that, again, I think Ellen might be playing in that interesting. Like, Ellen just is not getting on anybody's nerves. She's playing it very reserved and very, like.
Which, again, it's because she's keeping it close to her chest and not really, like, letting everybody know what's happening. I think Theresa is playing it all wrong, and she's just constantly talking and talking and talking. And that's eventually what gets Kathy upset and jealous. And she starts she goes to a group of women and starts saying, like, Theresa's bothering me. Like, she needs to keep her mouth shut. Like, this is all she keeps talking about. And Kathy just starts kind of like chippering in other women's ears about it.
And then April,
yeah. Which April, she saw the opportunity and was like, I'm going to just drop this.
I was so pissed.
I'm going to drop it for everybody.
I was so pissed when she says what she said. Wait, who did she said she talks to Theresa, right?
So they're in the group, and then April brings it up.
Oh yeah, she brings up to the group.
In front of the group.
And this is why it pissed me off.
Not pointing it at anybody.
This is why it pisses me off. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
She addresses the group and doesn't specify that people need to shut their mouths. So then Theresa is
she goes, keep your mouth shut.
Essentially.
And that's it.
So then Theresa is like, I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable because I feel that, like, she was talking about me. So they go into like a side like hall, and she's like, hey, like, April, like, I felt like that was kind of maybe directed towards me. Like, I think she even mentions, like, if you're going on individual dates with Gary, like, shut your mouth. Yeah. Essentially. So they go into the side hall, and then she's like, I just wanted to talk to you about, like, if I did anything to offend you. And she's like, well, I think you need to talk to Kathy. And I was like, so what the fuck? Because then she's like, well, I was speaking on behalf of her, but if you want to have a conversation, I think you need to talk to her. And it's like, well, April was the one that addressed the fucking room.
I think she is doing incredible television.
Well, yeah, I think that April and Kathy are going to be this villainous duo.
They are working not to be with Gary. They're working to be like the end people that are fan favorites just because they're on the television show. I also think April, I think also if you're living in this house with a bunch of women and there's one person who is complaining about another person, but they're not willing to speak up, I can see how you're like, fine, I'll say something so that we can just end this.
Yeah.
And so she was the one that was like, look, it's bothering people when you open your mouth about your date. So just keep your mouth shut, people, so that like this issue goes away.
Yeah.
And then
Theresa starts to instigate,
comes to her and she's like, wait, no, it's not my problem. I just presented the issue so we could get it done with. Go talk to Kathy. Which I think is good at the end of the day. I mean, if there's a problem, deal with it.
Yes. The final 15 minutes of the episode is like perfection editing. Like with reality TV.
Yeah, what are you about to talk about though? I do want to talk about one thing.
Well, we'll go ahead.
What's her name? Who's the motorcycle girl?
Faith.
She eventually, again throughout this episode, because in episode 2, she kind of keeps talking about how she's like, oh, I got the first impression rose, but like I feel like I'm not getting a lot of attention. And then in this episode 2, she keeps saying, she's like, I feel like I'm getting left behind a little bit. Like I don't really feel like I'm having one-on-one time with him. So she grabs him and is like, let's have a moment. And I don't even know what she was talking about, but do you remember he was like, oh, you're starting to get a little sappy on me. And she's like, oh, I know. Is it unattractive? And I was like, ew, who gives a shit if it's unattractive? Like, just say what you want to say. Like, are you this desperate for this man to think that you're attractive that like you would change your emotions based on what he's thinking? So she went down in my book a little bit, and then all of a sudden they have like a random makeout. And I was like, what's going on with this girl? Like, she started off very well and now is just kind of floundering.
Well, that's the thing too. So part of me believes that why she's complaining about it, which again, if you're going for your man, like you have to be able to stick out and like be like, hey, I'm over here. Like, I want to talk to you. Let's go, like, whatever. And that is her moment where she finally decides to do that since the premiere, where it wasn't something where she was showy. Like she came in on the motorcycle probably because that was on her resume and they were like, you ride a motorcycle? You should do this. And you actually find out, which I don't think we had known previously, maybe I'm forgetting, that Gary talks about, he goes, when I used to ride my motorcycle, I'm like, when the fuck
I didn't know
was Gary a motorcycle guy? So I think that with her, she's not the type of person that wants the drama. And I think that she doesn't want to have to like
work for it, you think?
I think that she feels uncomfortable by the format and having to try to compete with other women. And then we get that moment where it's just, again, it's like bad TV. It's like we don't know. She's not good at handling things, obviously.
I don't know. It's just when she was like, oh no, is it like unattractive?
I don't remember exactly what she said in the conversation with him, so I'd have to go back
she
and watch
literally
it,
was like, is it unattractive? And I was just like, oh my God. Like, if it's unattractive, let it be unattractive. Who gives a shit?
So stock down for Faith. Book.
Faith is like she's not doing well.
Okay. So does that happen? That happens before
Kathy's interaction.
Well, does that happen before April addresses the room too? Or is that after?
That's after, I think. I think they did. I think it was April's interaction with the room. Then Theresa confronting April. April saying, go find Kathy.
Then it's Faith. Then it's Kathy.
Then it's Kathy.
Okay, so this is what I was referring to. The last 20 minutes to 15 minutes of the episode
happens.
Is where like I sort of got hooked again, where I was like, all right, this is... Like, at least in terms of the drama, like, this is... I don't agree necessarily with everything that's happening, but it's entertaining as hell. So, Kathy finally sits down with Gary, and she starts to get emotional. Was she fake crying, or you think she was really crying?
I think she was really crying, but I think she...
I disagree, but interesting.
Really?
I think she was amping it up, and then she made herself cry. I don't think she was really that...
I think she was really crying because, I mean, she's talking about her dad.
Well, that part, yeah, but I'm talking like she shows the picture of her dad, but she doesn't start getting emotional until like he's like, oh, it's okay, and then she's like, there's just so many things happening in the house, and I'm like, all right, well, that you just transitioned with the snap of a finger.
She knew exactly what she was doing, running to him. I think that she was like, okay, if I talk about my dad, it'll help me and like make me seem a little bit more, a little bit softer too. But she totally knew what she was doing, running to him and telling him that there's problems in the house. And then when he was like, who is it? I feel like she almost said Theresa's name.
I think so too.
But she was like, ooh, if I specifically say Theresa's name, that makes me even look even worse.
She's part of like the whole thing that's happening. Yeah. So I think she handles that part well in terms of the dramatics.
Yeah. And then she gets a freaking rose.
That completely threw me.
Unbelievable.
Completely threw me.
So this brought Gary down in my book a little bit because for me, it's sad women he's giving roses to, I feel like. I feel like he doesn't know how to handle like...
In every scenario?
I just feel like it's whenever there's a little bit more of an emotional tension happening, the first thing he thinks of is like, let me give her a rose.
Yeah,
let me give her a rose to make her happier rather than talking with them and figuring out like what's actually happening.
That's a fair point. So she gets her rose, then she comes back and she is like, I got a rose.
Yeah.
And then Theresa finally thinks, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for me to go ahead and take Kathy aside and talk about the issues. So she does. And then again, like
Kathy rips
wait
into
a minute.
her.
Not only that, she, again, part of the reason why I think it's amped up a bit, or she's the greatest actress to ever fucking live, because Kathy just immediately gets like supernova angry.
Of course.
And it's just like not yelling at Theresa, but completely focused and sharpened attention.
And knows exactly what she's going to say.
It's crazy. And I was like I literally turned to my girlfriend and I go, whoa, like where did that come from? I have no, and again, it's like very pointed. It's very direct. And I was like, oh my God.
Well, I also think Kathy seemed very heightened versus Theresa, who is she's almost kind of mouse-like. She's a little bit more reserved, quiet, softer. And so Theresa's like, well, I was just trying to be open. And Kathy's like, nope, not buying it, Theresa, not buying it. And Teresa's like, I was just trying to like be a friend. And she's like, It was crazy.
It was crazy. And so then we go immediately from that moment to Theresa crying in the bedroom.
Wait, there is one line between these transitions that Leslie said. Did you catch it?
Maybe.
Leslie she goes, I'm just so sick of the drama. She goes, when I don't want to listen to it, I just turn off my hearing aids.
The hearing aids. Which I still think they're fake.
Hearing aids are fake.
I think
they bring them up way too many times for them to actually be real. Moving on.
No, 100% agree.
Teresa is crying.
I said the same thing.
Teresa is crying in her bedroom.
Gary confronts her. Talks about how what is the actual like context of the conversation again? Like, I forget, does he ask her like if someone was picking on her. It's not the same
Well,
way,
he goes
right?
in and he's like, "What's going on?" And then she's like, "I think people thought that I was being boastful."
Yes.
And then he does a side thing if he's like, "Wait, this was Theresa that everybody was talking about?" And he kind of is a little bit more taken back of like, this is now showing me maybe a side that I haven't necessarily seen yet.
Yeah.
And like, I might need to just kind of
think about it.
Think
Keep it
about
in the back of his head.
Yeah.
And then he addresses her in a completely different way, which I thought was great and smart in terms of either the editing or whatever.
He can't come at her and be like, "What are you doing?" Like, he does need to, because he doesn't know the situation. And unless you were there between the conversation between Kathy and Theresa, you really don't know.
Exactly. So he's basically like, if you don't feel like what you were saying was hurtful or you weren't doing it in a prideful or boastful manner, then, I think it's just something you have to kind of, just push it aside. Like, it's all good. Like, if you believe and everything's okay, then that's fine. And from there, we get to the rose ceremony. And I think that it was a situation where if the two women that got eliminated were not there, I thought Theresa was gone, because the two that do get eliminated are two women that we just have not seen much of at all. Like, literally since the first episode, I think we've gotten like 3 or 4 total asides from Edith.
Yeah.
But we see no actual intimate and chemistry inducing moments between Edith and Gary ever. Like, they didn't have a side conversation. Like, you don't see that like in episodes 2 or 3. So she was the one that I was like, oh, I think maybe he'll hold on to her. But the other woman too, who I'm even forgetting her name, when she was gone, like I knew as soon as the rose ceremony started,
who it was gonna be.
I was like, it's gonna be these two if he had to get rid of 2, and he did have to because Joan was gone.
Yeah.
But if Joan was still there, I think we might lose Theresa, which is crazy comparatively to.
I don't know though, because I think he does have a connection with Theresa.
I do, but if she's, and again, could be editing, but she gets to the bottom 3. And
I don't know though if that's how it's done. I think it's more of like keeping the audience on edge. I don't know if it's like, oh, she's my bottom 3.
So you think they know ahead of time and they just do it for the women know ahead of time?
For the suspension? No, the women don't. But I think it's like the suspension of like, ooh, is Theresa
But
gonna
I'm
make
saying
it?
if you're getting to a bottom 3, right, and 2 have to go, and that you look at a wide shot where every single woman is holding a rose, do you think that there's like another aside where they're like, all right, we're gonna do 16 different versions of the shot where some of you were holding roses and some of you aren't? Like, the bottom 3 is a situation.
Oh well, yeah, but I mean, she might not necessarily be his last pick. It might just be that the producers were like, you have to pick Theresa last because we want to make it seem intense.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, rather than because
I'm understanding you now.
He might have done the opposite of like, oh, let me pick Theresa first so that she knows like she's not going anywhere. But then production's like, no, that ruins the whole suspense.
Like everything we're going for.
So
with
they
this,
tell him like this has to be the last pick. Yeah, I made a note. I was like, they're just getting rid of like the kind of irrelevant people that they're not having actual storylines with. But now I feel
now
like
I'm in it because there's so many women
know
that
their
have
names now too. We have
and
faces.
every single one of them has at least one interaction with him that is meaningful.
Yes.
That we've seen. So, and again, I think we still have another few weeks of mass eliminations.
Yeah.
Like, multiple women are going to go.
Well,
so
I do want to talk about one more thing is that after the rose ceremony and the elimination, Theresa is standing next to Kathy and she says, she's like, so did you have a nice time like speaking with Gary? And Kathy goes, well, I was mostly crying most of the time. And Teresa's like, oh, well, that's like, oh, well, did you like connect? And then Kathy's like, this is what I don't want to talk to you about this.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I'm talking about, Theresa.
No, well, then Theresa says that she was crying. Kathy said,
you're
yes.
right. No.
So
Theresa
Kathy goes, I was crying the whole time. And she goes, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like,
I was crying too when he came into my room.
She goes, at least you got a rose. She goes, yeah, but I was crying too when he came in my room. She goes, he came into your room. And then she goes, Theresa, this is something that you need to be holding to yourself. And I was like, oh my God, we have some real beef. I
love it.
to see season 2 of Beef on Netflix with Kathy and Theresa replacing Ali Wong and Steven Yeun.
I think, and the closing line of Kathy is, I don't want to take the claws out, but you better zip the lip. What more do you want?
That's a line of dialogue that I feel like just twinged your heart.
Tattoo it on my arm right now, please.
Oh my God. I can't with you. Well, this was an episode.
This was a lot.
There was a lot that happened. I think the conversation has made me come out liking the episode more.
It's more drama happening.
More drama happening, but I am excited. This pickleball episode, man. Let's add this athletic component to these senior citizens. I'm hyped.
Let's do a little fun. Who is your guess of somebody that's getting eliminated next week?
I wish I had a full list in front of me. How many are left?
9.
Is it? I think it's 10.
I think it's 9 because it was just 12 last week. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
they got rid of 3.
Okay, you might be right. So wait, I want to do a quick
roster.
Yeah, I want to do a quick roster here. So let's see. So I do think that. All right, so Christina's still there? No, sent home week 3. Okay, Christina and Edith are the ones who went home this week, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So we're down to, like you said, I think it's 9. Why can't I find like a comprehensive list of this? This is frustrating. Yeah, it just tells me who went home.
I have one.
Okay, you go ahead.
I have 2. I think next week will be Nancy. Do you remember Nancy? Wedding dress Nancy? Who cried?
Wedding dress Nancy.
Remember she was upset about the wedding dress when she had it on last week?
Yes.
I think Nancy's going because she wasn't relevant in this.
And so how many do you think are going home?
I think 2.
Okay, so then we'll get to 7.
I think Kathy might be booted.
Wow. Okay, and I would agree with you because it seems like, and again, could be creative editing. It seems like there's a real issue that happens during one of the pickleball games with her and Ellen. I think it is too.
It looks like it, but I don't know.
But who knows?
We'll have to see.
Because I do think, again, like Ellen is someone, I think we're going to see a little different side of her this week because she's competitive, especially in terms of sports. So I'm psyched for this
ready
week's
for
episode.
It. Buckled
Very
up,
excited
ready.
For it. All right. I think that's it, right?
That's it.
Right.
That's it for episode 3.
That's it for episode 3 of The Golden Bachelor. Liz and I just talked about it for quite a while. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. We hope you guys are enjoying The Golden Bachelor, which you could watch on ABC at 8 p.m. on Thursdays. You could also catch it the next day on Hulu. You guys, if you don't already, make sure you follow us at Cinema Wave Media on Instagram. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment and share this video podcast with your friends, your family, other people of Bachelor Nation. Make sure you guys are listening on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts. Just signing off, I am Darian Scalamoni.
I am Liz Seiko.
And we'll see you guys next time.